from time to time. Now, I want to exhortation here, and it's very simple. As you think, so you shall become. Listen to what Paul had to say here in Ephesians chapter 4, verse number 7. He says, I want to tell you this and insist on it in the Lord, that you must no longer walk as the Gentiles in the futility of their thinking. Now, there's a very important fact that I like to remind people of, and especially if they have embraced Christianity and are followers of Jesus Christ. But it does have an application for non-Christian audiences, and that is simply this, that you and I are walking in this world and we should be different. You say, what do you mean different? Well, everybody these days seems to be living certain ways. And back in the day, we used to say, hey, I'm gonna do my thing. Many times we were all kind of doing the same thing. I remember during the late 60s and early 70s, people would be traveling across the world, or across the land, and, basically living off the land. There was a song label called Me and You and a Dog Named Boo, living off the land type situation. And it was kind of a nomadic lifestyle. Now, of course, the nomadic lifestyle has become a cultural phenomenon because everywhere you go on major platforms, you have people saying, I've been living in my car now for over a year, and this is how you can live in your car. And, some people say, I've been living in North Dakota in my fifth wheel, and this is what's been going on, and this is how we've made it better. People have said, I've lived in a tent for, I've lived in a tree. And I'm going, okay, you want to live in a tree, you want to live in a tent, that's fine. But there are some things that we need to make sure that we're not in our lives. Now, Paul makes it very, he says, I insist in this, Lord. He says, don't think or walk as the Gentiles do. Basically says, you who follow the Lord, you are totally and completely no longer under the control of the enemy. You see, if someone doesn't know the Lord, basically their allegiance and their control and their sovereign is Satan. And people don't like to hear that, but the Bible is very clear on that. So if you follow Jesus Christ like I do, you need to recognize that, first of all, you're not a citizen of this world, okay? You have a different destination, and that destination is heaven. Jesus made it very clear in John 14:3. He says, I go to prepare a place for you, and where I am, you shall be also. And then Paul gives a very important exhortation. He says, don't start, keep this mind pattern and mindset that you had before. Paul gives us a very simple exhortation found in Philippians chapter 4. He says, whatsoever things are right, and whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are praiseworthy or virtuous or excellence, he says, think on these things. So basically, what he is subscribing to, he also brought out in Second Corinthians chapter 10, where he basically says, take every thought captive. That means that you and I can actively capture our thoughts. In fact, in the book of Romans, it tells us that we can be renewed or transformed in our thinking. I love how one man put it. His name was Jack Hayford. He says, walking in the Spirit is actually submitting your thought life to God, allowing God to be the one who does the thinking. There's a song called the Soap Song, which was written by Carmen. And Carmen basically says, what you think, you eventually become. what you concentrate on becomes part of your nature. Let me give you a little example, okay? Let's say someone has offended you and you have chosen not to forgive them. Now, what's going to happen is that unforgiveness is going to color every relationship that you have, because deep down you're thinking sooner or later people are going to betray you. And when you, for example, hear all the political rhetoric, like right now, there's a lot of political rhetoric over the Los Angeles fires, okay? You've got, the president saying one thing, you've got the governor saying one thing, you got the mayor saying one thing, you got the fire chief saying something, you got the water person saying something, the general supervisor over the Los Angeles, and you're sitting there, what is truth? What is right? And it can make you very skeptical. Also, as well, in modern media, we have texts coming in and phone calls coming in and emails coming in of the latest scam. And so it really creates an environment of, cynicism and skepticism. But there is an answer, of course, and that is to focus your life on, of course, the Lord, and allow him to help you navigate. I'll give you an example. There's a guy named Daniel. Daniel lived during the time of the Babylonian and Medo-Persian empires. Now, those both empires were, they were evil, and they were totalitarian. They were, very, very polytheistic. And Paul was Daniel was a godly man. And yet he was able to navigate that. And one of the characteristics that they said was, this guy is totally honest and he's totally apolitical. He just does what God tells him to do. And he was beyond reproach. Now, that was a real important factor, and is a real important factor today. People need to see truth. They need to see honesty. They need to see integrity. They need to see transparency. They need to see something that is real. And there's not an awful lot of real people out there. I'm not saying that there isn't, but you could probably put in your circle of friendships maybe 3 or 4 people who are really, really honest, and the rest you'd have to say, I don't know about that. The simple fact is that when you and I think those right things, eventually they become habit and they become part of our character. And these are all decisions that we have to make. So you must make a decision. What kind of thinking am I going to allow? Am I going to sit there and worry and complain and come skeptical and cynical and et cetera, or am I going to believe the best? I've always subscribed to a couple of things. My wife and I, we came across a book years ago called Love, Acceptance, and Forgiveness. And that's what we do. We love, accept, and forgive. But we also know that we must believe the best for people, but never be surprised by the worst. And that does not change our relationship with people in that. And also as well, to make sure that our thinking is pure and holy and praiseworthy and virtuous and, excellent and pure, all of those things. And it's a decision, moment by moment, hour by hour, thought by thought. So I encourage you to no longer, think the way that everybody else thinks, but to center your life on the Word of God. You see, I talked about the fact that the Word of God is a cleansing agent, it is a faith builder, and it's also, something that feeds your soul. So allow that to happen. And remember, whatsoever things are right, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are holy, whatsoever things are virtuous, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are truthful, whatsoever things are honest. Think on these things. And as you do that, it's going to affect your speech. It's going to affect your lifestyle. It's going to affect your attitude. It's going to affect your motives. And when you do that, you are definitely doing what Paul encouraged us to do. Well, my name's Robert Dean Steele. Thank you so much for spending time with me. And I hope that something that I've said has stirred up your pure thinking, because that's what it says. Stir up your mind in the pure thinking. And so if you like what you've been seeing and hearing, press the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel. God bless.